Everybody in Texas know what the play is. If you rapping, you celebrity, if you like the strip club, you like to do this, you check in with them, they bringing them bad dice on you. Why you think they Duke the jeweler, they really couldn't get him? That's why they had, come on, homie.
For years, we all heard about the Prince family and how they extort rappers and celebrities when coming to Houston, acting like they're gonna give them protection. But what if I told you that J. Prince Jr. took that reputation and turned it into something way more sinister? We're talking about a calculated death trap disguised as Southern hospitality, loaded dice games that have left multiple people dead and countless others financially destroyed. This dude has been running the most sophisticated celebrity hunting operation in hip-hop history. He lures successful artists to Houston with promises of love and protection.
So you think you checking in over here, you checking, homie, these ain't having you checking in for the well-being and the safety of you just because you black?
Gains their trust through expensive hospitality, then leads them to rigged gambling operations where the house always wins. And when victims figure out the scam or refuse to accept their losses, that's when bodies start dropping. Today, we're exposing the entire operation, from his crew of professional scammers, Lil Cam, Wolf, and Big Caprice, to the federal investigation that's finally bringing this empire down. We're gonna break down how Duke the jeweler lost his life after accidentally beating their loaded dice, how Takeoff's murder connects to this same operation, and why 6ix9ine refused to come to Houston when J. Prince Jr. tried to set him up.
We had a conversation with J. Prince Jr., and he basically invited us to a club. And when we got there, basically it looked like somebody else was having issues with us. Then we weren't allowed it.
By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how one man's greed turned Houston into a graveyard for successful black men, and why every artist needs to know this story before they ever step foot in H-Town. So stay locked in, because this story is about to get real dark real quick. Let me break it down for you about who we're dealing with here. J. Prince Jr., son of the legendary J. Prince Sr., who built Rap-A-Lot Records. But this ain't about daddy's legacy. This is about a dude who took his family name and turned it into a weapon to prey on artists coming through Houston. See, when rappers roll into Houston, they expect that Southern hospitality. They expect to be shown love, taken to the best spots, maybe hit up some clubs. What they don't expect is to be led into a sophisticated gambling operation designed to drain their pockets and potentially cost them their lives. According to multiple sources, including explosive revelations from WAC 100.
J. Prince Jr.
Yeah, Junior.
So he starts an argument trying to take some from some dudes.
Just like D-Boy on him. You know, dude be taking, he aggressive with the women.
Well, don't say taking.
He got cases, bro. He got...
J. Prince Jr. has been running what's essentially a celebrity hunting operation. The setup is simple, but deadly effective. Befriend the artist, gain their trust, then lead them to a rigged dice game where the house always wins. But when things go wrong, when someone accidentally wins or figures out the scam, that's when bodies start dropping. This isn't just street rumors, fam. We got names, we got arrests, we got dead bodies, and we got a pattern that's been going on for years. The FBI has been watching, arrests have been made, and the whole operation is finally coming to light. To understand how deep this goes, you gotta understand the power dynamics at play. J. Prince Sr. built his reputation through legitimate business moves and protecting artists. He was respected because he used his influence to elevate people and protect the culture. But his son, he weaponized that same reputation for personal gain. The Prince name carries weight in Houston. When J. Prince Jr. approaches someone, they're not just meeting some random street dude, they're meeting hip-hop royalty. That automatic credibility is what makes the scam so effective. People drop their guard because they think they're dealing with family. But here's what makes this even more sinister. J. Prince Jr. didn't just inherit his father's reputation, he studied it. He learned exactly how to use hospitality as a weapon, how to make people feel special and protected right before he robbed them blind. This wasn't some amateur operation. This was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Before we dive into the crimes, we need to understand what J. Prince Jr. was working with. His father, J. Prince Sr., is a legitimate legend in hip-hop. Rap-A-Lot Records launched careers, protected artists from industry predators, and built an empire based on respect and results. J. Prince Sr. was known for his code: protect the family, handle business with integrity, and never let outsiders disrespect what you built. Artists like Scarface, Gato Boys, and countless others trusted him with their careers and their lives. That trust was earned through decades of consistent action. But somewhere along the way, J. Prince Jr. took those same principles and twisted them into something evil. Instead of protecting artists, he started hunting them. Instead of building legitimate business, he created elaborate scams. Instead of earning respect, he exploited his inherited reputation. The transformation didn't happen overnight. According to sources close to the family, J. Prince Jr. started small, maybe taking advantage of a drunk rapper here and there, maybe running small cons on people who wouldn't fight back. But as he got away with it, the operations got bigger and more sophisticated. What's particularly twisted is how he used his father's teachings against his victims. J. Prince Sr. taught him about reading people, about building trust, about making people feel like family. J. Prince Jr. took those skills and used them to identify marks, manipulate emotions, and create false security right before he struck. The loaded dice operation represents the complete corruption of everything the Prince name was supposed to stand for. Instead of being a safe haven for artists in Houston, J. Prince Jr. turned his family's reputation into a lure for predators. To really understand how deadly this scam is, you gotta understand the psychology behind it. This isn't just about cheating at dice. This is about sophisticated psychological manipulation designed to break down every defense mechanism a successful person might have. First, there's the reputation leverage. When J. Prince Jr. approaches someone, he's not just some random dude asking to hang out. He's the son of a hip-hop legend, someone whose family has protected artists for decades. That automatic credibility bypasses normal stranger danger instincts. Second, there's the isolation factor. When artists come to Houston, they're usually away from their normal support systems. Their usual security, their trusted advisors, their family. None of them are around to provide perspective or warning signs. J. Prince Jr. specifically targets people when they're most vulnerable. Third, there's the hospitality trap. Southern culture, especially in hip-hop, is built on showing love to visitors. When someone takes you to the best restaurants, introduces you to local celebrities, pays for everything, and treats you like family, it creates a psychological debt. You feel obligated to reciprocate, to trust, to go along with whatever they suggest. Fourth, there's the gradual escalation. J. Prince Jr. doesn't immediately suggest gambling. He builds the relationship first, creates trust, makes the target feel comfortable and safe. By the time the dice game gets mentioned, the victim's guard is completely down. Fifth, there's the social proof element. The dice games aren't just J. Prince Jr. and the victim, they're full of other people, creating the illusion of legitimacy. When you see other people gambling and having fun, it normalizes the activity and reduces suspicion. Finally, there's the ego manipulation. Successful rappers and celebrities have big egos. That's part of what made them successful. J. Prince Jr. exploits that by making the dice game seem like a test of manhood, a way to prove you belong in certain circles. Refusing to play becomes a sign of weakness or fear. All of these psychological factors work together to create the perfect storm for victimization. By the time someone realizes they're being scammed, they're already in too deep, surrounded by hostile people and far from help. The loaded dice operation wasn't a one-man show. According to WAC 100's revelations, J. Prince Jr. had a sophisticated crew with specific roles and responsibilities. Understanding how this crew operated shows just how calculated and professional this criminal enterprise really was. At the center of the operation were three key players: Lil Cam, Wolf, and Big Caprice. These weren't just random friends helping out. They were professional scammers with years of experience in running rigged gambling operations. Lil Cam appears to have been the primary dice handler. His job was to control the flow of the game, knowing exactly when to use loaded dice and when to use regular ones. He had to be smooth enough to switch dice without anyone noticing, and skilled enough to make the loaded dice hits look natural. Wolf's role seems to have been muscle and intimidation. When things got heated, when someone started asking too many questions, Wolf was there to apply pressure. Not necessarily physical violence, though that was always an option, but psychological intimidation to keep people in line. Big Caprice functioned as the social coordinator. His job was to keep the atmosphere light, to make jokes when tension rose, to redirect attention when someone got too suspicious. He was the one who made sure the victim stayed comfortable and engaged even as they were being robbed. But the crew extended beyond these three core members. There were lookouts, people whose job was to watch for police or other threats. There were money handlers, people who collected and counted the winnings. There were even people whose only job was to provide social proof, to act like regular gamblers having fun so the victims wouldn't realize they were the only real marks in the room. The sophistication of this operation can't be overstated. They had backup plans for when things went wrong, protocols for handling suspicious victims, and even exit strategies for when law enforcement got too close. This wasn't some street-level hustle. This was organized crime. What makes it even more sinister is how they recruited new crew members. According to sources, J. Prince Jr. would identify young, hungry street dudes and slowly bring them into the operation. He'd start them with small roles, maybe just providing security or running errands, and gradually increase their involvement until they were fully complicit. This recruitment strategy served multiple purposes. It gave J. Prince Jr. a steady supply of expendable crew members who could take the fall if things went wrong. It also created a culture of loyalty and fear, where crew members were too invested in the operation to consider betraying it. The crew also had specific protocols for different types of victims. Rappers got one treatment, athletes got another, business people got a third approach. They studied their marks, learned their weaknesses, and customized their approach for maximum effectiveness. Now let me break down exactly how this death trap operated, because understanding the mechanics shows just how calculated and evil this whole setup really was. Step 1 was target identification. J. Prince Jr. and his crew didn't just randomly approach people, they did research. They knew who was coming to Houston, how much money they had, who they were traveling with, and what their weaknesses might be. Social media made this easier than ever. They could track someone's movements, see their jewelry and cars, and even identify their personality traits from their posts. Step 2 was the approach. J. Prince Jr. would make contact, usually through mutual connections or by showing up at events where the target would be present. The initial contact was always casual, friendly, and focused on showing respect for the target's success. Yo, I heard you were in town. My family got love for what you're doing. Let me show you some Houston hospitality. Step 3 was the courtship phase. This could last hours or even days, depending on how long the target was in town. J. Prince Jr. would pull out all the stops: expensive restaurants, VIP treatment at clubs, introductions to local celebrities, maybe even gifts or loans that were never expected to be repaid. The goal was to create a sense of obligation and friendship. Step 4 was the setup. Once trust was established, J. Prince Jr. would casually mention the dice game. Yo, my boys are shooting dice tonight. You should come through, make some quick money. It was always presented as an opportunity, never as pressure. The target had to feel like they were choosing to participate. Step 5 was the game itself. The location was always somewhere that felt safe and legitimate. Maybe a nice house, maybe a private room at a club. There would be multiple people there, creating the illusion of a regular social gathering. The dice game would start with regular dice and small bets, letting the target win a little to build confidence. Step 6 was the switch. Once the target was comfortable and betting bigger amounts, the loaded dice would come into play. The crew members would start winning consistently, but not so obviously that it raised immediate suspicion. They'd let the target win occasionally to keep them engaged. Step 7 was the drain. Over the course of the night, the target would lose more and more money. The crew was skilled at reading when someone was getting suspicious or ready to quit, and they'd adjust their strategy accordingly. Sometimes they'd let the target win back some money to keep them playing. Sometimes they'd apply social pressure. You're not gonna quit while you're down, are you? Step 8 was the exit. Once the target was cleaned out or getting too suspicious, the game would end. If everything went smoothly, the target would leave thinking they just had bad luck. They might be frustrated, but they wouldn't suspect they'd been scammed. But step 9 was where things got dangerous. Damage control. If the target figured out they'd been cheated, if they demanded their money back, if they threatened to expose the operation, that's when violence became an option. The crew couldn't afford to let word get out about the scam, so they'd do whatever it took to protect their operation. The genius of this system was its flexibility. They could adjust the approach based on the target, the situation, and the amount of money involved. Small-time victims might just get cleaned out and sent on their way. High-profile victims who posed a threat to the operation might face more serious consequences. Now let me tell you about Duke the Jeweler, because his story shows exactly how deadly this operation becomes when the scam goes wrong and the victim refuses to accept their fate. Duke wasn't just some random mark. He was a successful businessman who had built a reputation in the hip-hop jewelry game. He had money, he had connections, and he had the kind of lifestyle that made him a perfect target for J. Prince Jr.'s operation. When Duke came to Houston, he got the full treatment. According to sources, Duke was given the royal treatment from the moment he arrived. J. Prince Jr. personally showed him around the city, took him to exclusive spots, introduced him to local celebrities. Duke was feeling the love, thinking he'd found genuine friendship in Houston. The invitation to the dice game came after a night of partying. Duke was feeling good, trusting his new friends, and ready to have some fun. When Jay Prince Jr. suggested they shoot some dice, Duke saw it as just another part of the Houston experience. But something went catastrophically wrong that night. According to WAC 100's inside sources, someone in the crew made a critical error. They accidentally passed the loaded dice to Duke instead of keeping them with the designated crew members. Duke started hitting, and he started hitting hard. We're talking about him winning hundreds of thousands of dollars from Jay Prince Jr.'s crew. In a legitimate game, this would just be good luck. But in a rigged operation, this was a disaster. The crew was watching their own loaded dice being used against them, and there was nothing they could do about it without exposing the entire scam. They couldn't accuse Duke of cheating because they were the ones with the loaded dice. They couldn't stop the game without raising suspicion. They were trapped by their own system. As Duke kept winning, the crew's frustration grew. This wasn't supposed to happen. The loaded dice were supposed to guarantee their victory, not hand hundreds of thousands of dollars to their mark. But Duke had no idea what was happening. He thought he was just having an incredible night of luck. When the game finally ended, Duke had won a massive amount of money. He was excited, grateful to his new friends for including him in such a profitable night, and ready to celebrate his good fortune. He had no idea that he'd just signed his own death warrant. The crew couldn't just let Duke walk away with their money, not because it was legitimately theirs, but because letting word get out that their operation could be beaten would destroy their entire business model. They needed that money back, and they needed to make sure Duke couldn't tell anyone what had happened. So they came up with a plan. They invited Duke to a Lil Boozy concert that same night. "Yo, come through to this show, we'll celebrate your big win." Duke thought he was going to party with his new friends. He had no idea he was walking into an execution. At the concert, Duke was in a great mood. He was flashing his jewelry, showing off his designer bags, and yes, he had that bag of cash from his dice game winnings. He was having the time of his life, completely unaware that he was being watched and that a plan was being put into motion. The crew used the concert as an opportunity to study Duke's movements, identify when he'd be most vulnerable, and coordinate their attack. They weren't just planning a robbery, they were planning a murder disguised as a robbery. After the show ended, Duke walked to his car alone. That's when they made their move. Multiple attackers approached him in the parking lot demanding their money back. But Duke wasn't going for it. He knew he'd won that money fair and square, and he was ready to fight for it. Duke's refusal to hand over the money sealed his fate. The attackers couldn't afford to let him live after he'd seen their faces and knew about their operation. They shot Duke multiple times, killing him in that parking lot. Here's what makes this murder even more sinister. They left all his jewelry on him. Duke was wearing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of chains, watches, and rings, but the killers only took the cash from the dice game. This wasn't a random robbery gone wrong. This was a targeted execution to recover specific money and eliminate a witness. Duke the jeweler died because he accidentally won money that was never supposed to be winnable. He died because a criminal organization couldn't afford to let their scam be exposed. He died because Jay Prince Jr.'s greed was more important than human life. But Duke the jeweler wasn't the only victim of this operation. The most high-profile case involves someone we all know and love, Takeoff from the Migos, and the circumstances surrounding his death reveal just how dangerous this operation had become. According to multiple sources, Quavo and Takeoff were in Houston and got the same treatment from Jay Prince Jr. that every other victim received. The hospitality, the friendship, the gradual building of trust. But this time, the target was someone with serious money and serious connections. The dice game that night was bigger than usual. We're talking about serious money on the table, the kind of stakes that could make or break someone's financial situation. Quavo was playing, and initially things seemed to be going normally. But as the night progressed, Quavo started losing. And we're not talking about small amounts. According to sources, he lost over $100,000 in a relatively short period of time. For most people, that would be devastating. For Quavo, it was suspicious. See, Quavo isn't some amateur gambler. He's been around money, he's been around street dudes, and he knows how dice games are supposed to work. When the same three people, Lil Cam, Wolf, and Big Caprice, kept winning, kept passing the dice between each other in a specific pattern, Quavo started to realize something wasn't right. The audio that leaked from that night tells the whole story. You can hear the tension building as Quavo gets more and more frustrated. He's not just mad about losing money, he's mad about being played. He's realizing that his new friends have been scamming him from the beginning. That's when Quavo got heated and started calling out the game. You can hear him in the audio saying he doesn't want to talk about basketball, he wants to focus on the dice. But what he's really saying is, I know y'all are cheating, and I want my money back. The crew tried to deflect, tried to change the subject, tried to calm the situation down, but Quavo wasn't having it. He'd lost too much money, and he was too smart to keep pretending he didn't know what was happening. That's when Quavo made the demand that sealed Takeoff's fate. He told them to change the dice. In a legitimate game, that's a reasonable request, but in a rigged operation, it's essentially an accusation of cheating. Quavo was calling them out directly, and everyone in the room knew it. The crew couldn't just change the dice without admitting the whole game was rigged, but they also couldn't refuse without confirming Quavo's suspicions. They were trapped, and trapped criminals are dangerous criminals. According to reports, the main person Quavo was arguing with was Lil Cam, one of the 3 core members of J. Prince Jr.'s dice crew. Lil Cam knew that if Quavo exposed the operation, it would destroy everything they'd built. The money, the reputation, the whole criminal enterprise would come crashing down. The tension in the room was escalating rapidly. You had Quavo, a successful rapper with serious connections, accusing a crew of professional scammers of cheating him out of 6 figures. You had Takeoff, an innocent bystander who was just there to support his nephew. And you had a room full of criminals who couldn't afford to let their operation be exposed. That's when things turned deadly. In the chaos that followed, shots were fired. Multiple weapons were drawn, multiple people were shooting, and in the confusion, Takeoff, who wasn't even involved in the argument, caught a bullet and lost his life. The man who allegedly fired the shot that killed Takeoff connected to the same dice game crew that had been scamming celebrities for years. This wasn't some random club shooting. This was the inevitable result of a criminal operation that had been allowed to operate unchecked for too long. Lil Cam was later arrested in connection with Takeoff's murder. Think about that for a second. One of the core members of J. Prince Jr.'s loaded dice crew is now facing murder charges for killing one of hip-hop's most beloved artists. That's not a coincidence, fam. That's the natural progression of a criminal enterprise that uses violence to protect its interests. The death of Takeoff represents the ultimate corruption of everything hip-hop is supposed to stand for. Here was a young man who had worked his whole life to achieve success, who had brought joy to millions of fans, who had never hurt anyone. And he died because his nephew refused to be scammed by people who were supposed to show them love. What makes this even more tragic is that Takeoff's death was completely preventable. If J. Prince Jr. had been running legitimate dice games, if he hadn't been scamming people, if he hadn't created a criminal organization that used violence to solve problems, Takeoff would still be alive today. Instead, one of hip-hop's brightest stars is dead because a criminal couldn't afford to let his scam be exposed. Takeoff died for J. Prince Jr.'s greed, and that's something the culture should never forget or forgive. But the operation wasn't limited to people who happened to be in Houston. J. Prince Jr. was actively hunting celebrities, trying to lure them to his city specifically for the purpose of scamming them, and one of his most ambitious targets was 6ix9ine. According to 6ix9ine himself, J. Prince Jr. was persistently trying to get him to come to Houston. This wasn't just casual invitations. This was a sustained campaign to get 6ix9ine into J. Prince Jr.'s territory where he could be controlled and manipulated. The approach was classic J. Prince Jr. Respect, hospitality, business opportunities. Yo, you need to come to Houston. My family got love for you. We can do some business, show you the real city. To someone who didn't know about the loaded dice operation, it would have sounded like genuine friendship and opportunity. But 6ix9ine had been around enough street politics to smell something fishy. Maybe it was the persistence of the invitations, maybe it was the vague nature of the business opportunities, or maybe it was just street instincts. Whatever it was, 6ix9ine decided not to take the bait. This decision probably saved 6ix9ine's life, or at least his financial future. Based on what we know about J. Prince Jr.'s operation, 6ix9ine would have been a perfect target. He was controversial, which meant fewer people would believe him if he claimed he'd been scammed. He was wealthy, which meant there was serious money to be made, and he was isolated from traditional hip-hop support systems, which meant he'd be vulnerable. When 6ix9ine didn't show up to an event where J. Prince Jr. was expecting him, J. Prince Jr.'s reaction revealed just how invested he was in getting 6ix9ine to Houston. He got on stage with 50 goons and called 6ix9ine out publicly, essentially trying to shame him into coming to Houston. But think about that reaction for a second. Why would you be that pressed about someone not showing up to an event unless you had specific plans for them? Why would you bring 50 people to publicly call someone out unless their absence was costing you money? The public call-out was actually a strategic move. By making 6ix9ine look scared or disrespectful, Jay Prince Jr. was trying to pressure him into coming to Houston to defend his reputation. It was psychological manipulation on a grand scale, using 6ix9ine's ego and public image against him. Fortunately for 6ix9ine, he didn't fall for it. He stayed away from Houston, avoided the trap, and lived to tell the story. But his experience shows how far Jay Prince Jr. was willing to go to lure victims into his operation. The 6ix9ine situation also reveals the interstate nature of Jay Prince Jr.'s criminal enterprise. This wasn't just about scamming people who happened to be in Houston. This was about actively recruiting victims from across the country. That makes it a federal crime, which explains why the FBI eventually got involved. When all this information started coming to light, Jay Prince Jr. went into damage control mode. He started doing interviews, making public statements, and trying to control the narrative around the deaths and the dice game allegations. His appearance on $1 million worth of game was particularly revealing. When asked directly about the loaded dice allegations, he deflected. When asked about the deaths that happened after his dice games, he acted like it was all coincidence. But his body language, his evasiveness, and his refusal to directly address the allegations told a different story. Jay Prince Jr.'s strategy seemed to be to acknowledge that dice games happened while denying any wrongdoing. Yeah, we shoot dice sometimes, but it's all legitimate. These deaths are just coincidences. People are trying to blame me for things I had nothing to do with. But the pattern was too clear, the connections too obvious. When multiple people die after attending your dice games, when your crew members get arrested for murder, when federal investigations start focusing on your operation, it's hard to claim innocence. Jay Prince Jr. also tried to use his family's reputation as a shield. He'd reference his father's legacy, talk about the Prince family's contributions to hip-hop, and try to position himself as a victim of false accusations. But that strategy backfired because it reminded people of how far he'd fallen from his family's standards. The media manipulation extended beyond interviews. Jay Prince Jr. and his supporters started spreading counter-narratives on social media, trying to discredit witnesses and accusers. They'd question people's motives, attack their credibility, and try to muddy the waters around the allegations. But the most sinister aspect of the cover-up was the intimidation campaign. According to sources, people who spoke out about the loaded dice operation faced threats, harassment, and worse. The message was clear: keep your mouth shut or face consequences. This intimidation campaign shows just how much Jay Prince Jr. had to lose if the truth came out. Legitimate business people don't threaten witnesses. Innocent people don't need to silence accusers. The cover-up attempts were almost as damning as the original crimes. But despite Jay Prince Jr.'s attempts to control the narrative, federal authorities were building a case. And according to some explosive allegations from WAC 100, Jay Prince Jr. might have been cooperating with those same authorities. WAC claims he overheard a phone conversation where Jay Prince Jr. was talking about 80 to 100 people in a context that suggested advanced knowledge of law enforcement operations. The next day, federal agents conducted sweeps in Houston that resulted in exactly that number of arrests. If true, this would mean Jay Prince Jr. isn't just a criminal. He's a federal informant using his position in the street community to gather intelligence for law enforcement. That would explain how he's been able to avoid serious consequences while his crew members get arrested one by one. The timing of the federal sweeps is particularly suspicious. They happened right after the Takeoff murder brought national attention to Houston's street politics. It's almost like someone provided authorities with a list of targets to distract from the real investigation. Federal cooperation would also explain Jay Prince Jr.'s confidence in doing interviews and making public statements. If you're protected by federal authorities, you can afford to be more brazen about your activities. You know that even if local law enforcement wants to arrest you, federal protection will keep you safe, but cooperation comes with a price. If Jay Prince Jr. is indeed working with federal authorities, it means he's betrayed every principle his family name was supposed to represent. Street credibility, loyalty, keeping your mouth shut, all of that goes out the window when you start snitching. The federal investigation also explains why so many people in Houston's street community have started distancing themselves from Jay Prince Jr. Word travels fast in those circles, and if people suspect you're cooperating with law enforcement, you become radioactive. Multiple arrests have been made in connection with the dice game operation and related violence. Lil Cam, one of the core crew members, is facing murder charges. Other associates have been picked up on various charges. The whole network is being systematically dismantled. But Jay Prince Jr. remains free, continues to make public appearances, and seems remarkably unconcerned about the federal investigation. That level of confidence usually comes from one of two sources. Either you're completely innocent or you're completely protected. Given the evidence, innocence seems unlikely. The loaded dice operation and its violent consequences have had a devastating impact on Houston's hip-hop community. What was once known as one of the most welcoming cities in the South has become a place that artists actively avoid. Promoters are having trouble booking shows because artists don't want to come to Houston. When they do come, they demand extra security, shorter stays, and sometimes refuse to leave their hotels except for performances. The atmosphere of fear and suspicion has poisoned the entire scene. Local artists are suffering because the negative publicity makes it harder for them to get opportunities outside of Houston. When your city becomes associated with celebrity hunting and murder, it affects everyone who's trying to build a career in that market. The economic impact extends beyond just hip-hop. Houston's entertainment industry, its hospitality sector, and its reputation as a tourist destination have all been damaged. When word gets out that successful people get targeted in your city, it affects all kinds of business. Other legitimate street figures in Houston have been forced to distance themselves from Jay Prince Jr. and his operation. People who built their reputations on protecting artists and showing genuine hospitality now have to prove they're not associated with the loaded dice scam. The culture of Southern hospitality that made Houston special has been weaponized and corrupted. Now, when someone offers to show an artist around the city, there's suspicion instead of gratitude. When someone suggests shooting dice, there's fear instead of excitement. Young people in Houston who looked up to the Prince family name are now seeing what happens when that legacy gets corrupted. Instead of learning about building legitimate businesses and protecting the culture, they're seeing how greed and violence destroy everything. The ripple effects extend to other southern cities as well. If Houston can't be trusted, artists start questioning whether they're safe in Atlanta, Miami, New Orleans, or anywhere else. The whole regional hip-hop ecosystem suffers when one major city becomes associated with predatory behavior. What makes Jay Prince Jr.'s crimes particularly heinous is how they represent a fundamental betrayal of hip-hop culture's core values. Hip-hop is supposed to be about lifting each other up, showing love to people who make it out of difficult circumstances, and creating opportunities for success. When artists travel to different cities, they expect to be embraced by the local hip-hop community. That expectation is based on shared experiences, shared struggles, and shared values. Jay Prince Jr. weaponized those expectations to prey on his own people. The psychological impact of this betrayal extends far beyond the immediate victims. Every artist who trusted Jay Prince Jr., every person who believed in the Prince family legacy, every fan who thought hip-hop was a safe space for successful black men, they all became victims of his deception. Trust is the foundation of any community, and Jay Prince Jr.'s actions have damaged trust throughout the hip-hop world. Now artists have to question every invitation, every gesture of friendship, every offer of hospitality. The paranoia and suspicion he created will last for years. The betrayal is particularly painful because it came from someone who was supposed to be family. Jay Prince Jr. wasn't some outsider trying to exploit hip-hop. He was born into the culture, raised in the community, and given every advantage that comes with his family name. He chose to use those advantages to hurt people. For young people watching this story unfold, it's a harsh lesson about how success can corrupt people. Jay Prince Jr. had everything: money, respect, connections, opportunities. But instead of using those blessings to help others, he used them to prey on others. The psychological manipulation tactics Jay Prince Jr. used are particularly insidious because they exploit basic human needs for connection, respect, and belonging. When someone makes you feel special, when they treat you like family, when they show you genuine hospitality, it creates emotional bonds that are hard to break even when logic tells you something is wrong. The Jay Prince Jr. operation represents a new evolution in celebrity targeting that goes far beyond traditional robbery or extortion. This was a sophisticated psychological operation designed to exploit the specific vulnerabilities of successful entertainers. Celebrities face unique risks because their wealth is public, their movements are tracked on social media, and their need to maintain public relationships makes them vulnerable to manipulation. Jay Prince Jr. understood these vulnerabilities and built his entire operation around exploiting them. The loaded dice scam is particularly insidious because it doesn't look like a crime. Unlike a robbery or kidnapping, gambling appears to be a voluntary activity. Victims can't easily go to police because they were technically participating in illegal gambling, the perfect crime until it turns violent, This case should serve as a wake-up call for celebrity security teams, management companies, and the artists themselves. Traditional security focuses on physical threats, bodyguards, secure transportation, controlled environments, but psychological manipulation requires different defenses. Artists need to understand that their success makes them targets not just for random criminals, but for sophisticated operations designed specifically to exploit their wealth and status. The people who pose the greatest threat might not be strangers in dark alleys. They might be people with familiar names offering friendship and hospitality. The entertainment industry needs to develop new protocols for protecting artists when they travel. This might include background checks on local contacts, verification of business relationships, and education about common scams targeting celebrities. Law enforcement also needs to adapt to these new threats. Traditional policing focuses on reactive responses to crimes that have already occurred, but sophisticated celebrity targeting operations require proactive intelligence gathering and prevention strategies. The legal implications of the J. Prince Jr. operation extend far beyond simple gambling charges. We're talking about potential federal racketeering charges, conspiracy to commit murder, interstate criminal enterprise, and possibly even terrorism charges if the intimidation campaign is proven. The fact that victims were targeted across state lines makes this a federal case, which means federal resources, federal penalties, and federal prison time. The FBI doesn't get involved in local gambling disputes. They get involved when there's evidence of organized criminal activity. Multiple agencies are likely involved in the investigation. The FBI for the interstate aspects, the DEA if there are drug connections, the ATF if there are weapons charges, and local law enforcement for the murders and assaults. This is a multi-jurisdictional investigation with serious resources behind it. The murder charges against Lil Cam are just the beginning. If prosecutors can prove that the loaded dice operation was a criminal enterprise, everyone involved could face RICO charges. That means decades in federal prison for everyone from the core crew members to the lookouts and money handlers. The potential cooperation between J. Prince Jr. and federal authorities adds another layer of complexity. If he's providing information about other criminal activities in exchange for protection, it could lead to a massive investigation of Houston's street politics. But cooperation also creates legal vulnerabilities. If J. Prince Jr. has been involved in planning or facilitating crimes while working as an informant, he could face charges for those activities. Federal protection doesn't extend to ongoing criminal behavior. The civil liability is also enormous. Families of victims like Duke the Jeweler and Takeoff could file wrongful death lawsuits seeking millions in damages. Even victims who survived the scam could sue for fraud, emotional distress, and other damages. Insurance companies, venues, and anyone else connected to events where the scam operated could also face liability. If it can be proven that they knew or should have known about the criminal activity, they could be held responsible for enabling it. So what can the hip-hop community learn from this tragedy? How do we prevent future J. Prince Jr.'s from exploiting our culture and hurting our people? First, we need to stop giving people automatic credibility based on family names or past reputations. Every person has to earn trust through their own actions, regardless of who their parents are or what their last name represents. Legacy is inherited, but character is earned. Second, we need to create better support systems for artists when they travel. This might mean establishing verified networks of trustworthy local contacts, creating protocols for vetting invitations and opportunities, and providing education about common scams targeting celebrities. Third, we need to change the culture around gambling in hip-hop. Too often, gambling is portrayed as a sign of success or masculinity, but gambling addiction destroys lives, and rigged gambling operations destroy communities. We need to be more honest about these risks. Fourth, we need to hold people accountable when they betray the culture. J. Prince Jr.'s actions weren't just crimes. They were betrayals of everything hip-hop is supposed to represent. The community needs to make it clear that this behavior is unacceptable and will have consequences. Fifth, we need to support the victims and their families. Duke the Jeweler's family, Takeoff's family, and everyone else who was hurt by this operation deserve justice, support, and recognition. Their stories need to be told so that others can learn from their experiences. Finally, we need to rebuild trust in the hip-hop community. That means being more transparent about threats, more supportive of people who speak out about problems, and more committed to protecting each other from predators. The J. Prince Jr. case shows us that our success makes us targets, but it also shows us that we have the power to protect each other if we're willing to work together. The culture that created hip-hop is strong enough to survive this betrayal, but only if we learn from it and do better going forward. At the end of the day, this story is about more than just loaded dice and murdered jewelers. It's about the corruption of trust, the weaponization of culture, and the deadly consequences of unchecked greed. J. Prince Jr. had everything: a legendary family name, respect in the community, connections throughout the industry, and opportunities that most people can only dream of. But instead of using those blessings to lift others up, he used them to tear others down for personal profit. Duke the jeweler is dead because he accidentally won money that was never supposed to be winnable. Takeoff is dead because his nephew refused to be scammed by people who were supposed to show them love. Multiple families have been destroyed, multiple careers have been damaged, and an entire city's reputation has been tarnished. All because one man decided that his greed was more important than human life, more important than cultural values, and more important than the legacy his family had built over decades. But this story also shows the power of truth. When people like WAC 100 speak up, when victims share their stories, when investigators do their jobs, these operations get exposed. The darkness can't survive in the light, and the truth always finds a way to come out. The federal investigation is ongoing, more arrests are likely, and more details about the operation will continue to emerge. Justice may be slow, but it's coming for everyone involved in this criminal enterprise. For the hip-hop community, this case serves as a wake-up call about the threats we face and the need to protect each other. We can't let predators use our culture against us. We can't let greed corrupt the values that made hip-hop special, and we can't let the actions of one criminal destroy the trust and hospitality that define our community. To every artist reading this, be careful who you trust. Verify before you believe. And if something feels wrong, trust your instincts and get out. Your life is worth more than any amount of money or any fake friendship. To everyone else, we have to do better as a culture. We have to call out predators, support victims, and make sure that hip-hop remains a space for elevation, not exploitation. The many victims of J. Prince Jr. deserve justice. They deserve to have their stories told, and they deserve to know that their deaths weren't in vain if it prevents others from falling into the same trap. This is the real story behind the loaded dice death trap. Share this information, spread the word, and make sure that every person in the hip-hop community knows about this operation. Knowledge is power, and power is protection. The streets are watching, but so are the predators. Know the difference, and protect yourself accordingly. Because in the end, the only thing that stops predators like J. Prince Jr. is an informed community that refuses to be victimized. Stay safe out there, fam. The culture depends on it.